All right, folks, we are here for GAIN, the Generative AI News Rundown. We do this every week at 12 noon Eastern Time. We are live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you're out there, put it in the comment. Let us know that you're here. We'll try to incorporate what you say, your comments, questions into the show today. We have a big show coming up. We have a featured guest, the founder and CEO of Rally Legal. He's in traffic right now, so hopefully he's going to join us in about 5 minutes. But talk about a co-pilot for lawyers, the robot lawyer, whatever you want to refer to it. They just raised $10 million. And so Scott wanted to drop in and talk a little bit about that. But we have a lot of other things that we're talking about. Talking about fundraising, Anthropic, big number, billions now raised. So we can talk about that. There's a Google story there and many others. We're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Build. Many of you know that we did a show on this just a couple of days ago, but there's more to talk about there. ChatGPT, Opera, Adobe Photoshop, Tesla, a lot of great things today. And I'm Brett Kinsella, founder of Synthedia and VoiceBot.ai. And I have my colleague here, Eric Schwartz. Hey, Eric, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well. Excited for all the chat today.
All right. So I think what we'll do while we're waiting for Scott, I think he's actually just arrived in the green room. So we'll give him a second to get sorted with our producer. But I thought we would start off just talking about the ChatGPT iOS app. And there's a couple of things that we thought would be interesting here to talk about. Now, first of all, this came out 1 minute after we finished last week's news rundown. So we've done a lot since then. But this has been very important. The one thing I wanted to point out to people right in there, you can see ChatGPT on iOS, the #1 app in productivity after 1 week. Does that surprise you, Eric?
No, not at all. I mean, considering that the Bing mobile app was able to rocket up the charts when the Bing AI chat started rolling out, it doesn't surprise me at all that the official ChatGPT app is #1, especially within the productivity space. Who knows, what it's edging out in the general app listings, but I think everyone who has any interest in this at all is going to be at least trying it out, even if they're not going to be paying for Plus necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to talk about this a little bit, we won't go into much detail, but I have an extensive write-up and a video demo of the iOS app. If you're on Android and you haven't used it yet, so you would just want to see what it looks like, or if you're on iOS and you actually want to know what the features are, there aren't that many features. It's kind of like the desktop app, but there are a few, and they're not exactly intuitive. They're intuitive once you know to do them. But so we sort of pointed out a few of those and did a quick walkthrough so we can do it. But one of the things that we've been thinking about with ChatGPT is there's a lot of desktop users. There's clearly a lot of mobile users, and they were so interested in this app that they were using ChatGPT through a browser on mobile. And I think some of the data that I was looking at in terms of their direct traffic, something like 50% of all their traffic was on mobile. And that was just like a horrible user experience, much better in the mobile app.
Yeah, and there was people willing to go on the browser. There was plenty of third-party apps that were in some form interfacing with ChatGPT, or at least a variant of it. And now that once you have the sort of official direct line, it's not surprising that people are going to jump into it, even if it doesn't necessarily have some of the bells and whistles of the previous third-party versions.
Absolutely. Okay. And what we'll do here is if anybody wants to look at that, you can go to the YouTube channel to see it, or you can just hit that bit.ly link to Synthedia. Just look at it. It's actually, this is the most popular Synthedia post that we've ever put up. It's just, obviously the ones that are newer, we have more followers and those sort of go to the top, but this thing rocketed to the top. And, a lot of people are just very interested in ChatGPT. That's very clear. All right. So let's see. Looks like Scott's ready. So let's bring Scott on stage. Scott Stevenson, thanks for joining us.
Hey, folks. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Hey, I think we should start off with congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we're super excited about the raise.
All right. So we'll let's pull this up really quickly so we have a nice visual for you. You can talk about it. But the big news is you just raised 10.9. We'll call it 11 million, give or take,
sure.
Right?
Okay, with that.
The extra 100,000, but you just raised $11 million for a lawyer co-pilot you were on the Synthedia event that we held in December, shortly after you launched this. We did an interview with you. I think it was back in November as well, right when you launched it. A lot has
you're
changed
one of the
over that
first.
time. So, like, give us the update.
Yeah, things have continued to go exceptionally well. We raised this round basically because we had overwhelming demand. We weren't planning to raise anytime soon as a company, but the demand basically hit the point where we just couldn't keep up without massively, or I shouldn't say massively, but without scaling, our staff significantly. For example, we had 8,000 lawyers sign up to our waitlist in April. And currently we're onboarding, around 50 legal teams a week, which is great. But it's not keeping up, with the number of lawyers coming in. So, we're really excited to raise that capital. We're going to use that to, scale our engineering and product and AI team. We're going to be hiring, lots more sales staff and customer support staff, marketing, and pretty much every department in the company. So yeah, we're really excited about it.
Well, my recollection is back. So you launched this in the first week in November. This was pre-ChatGPT, if anybody remembers that there was an era before that.
Yeah.
And you were using, I think, GPT 3.5. And I want to say you told me, I can't remember if it was within a week or two of that, you had 500 law firms on a wait list.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Within 2 weeks?
Yeah, very, very, very quickly. We had a huge number of lawyers sign up to that waitlist. So yeah, there was immediate interest, and this was before ChatGPT. So the tech was pretty new at that point. People didn't quite know what to make of it. And then when the ChatGPT hype started, that actually only made us grow faster and faster, because now all of a sudden every lawyer in the world is typing into Google like law plus GPT, law plus AI. What's this going to mean for me? And so that just became a huge driver of growth for us.
Well, and the other thing that I think I remember from that period of time is I think you said, this might have been in December, you were onboarding about 30 law firms a week at that point, and you said you really needed to do 100 to keep up with demand. Is that sort of where you are even today?
Yeah, that's where we're trying to get to 100 now. We're getting close. And then maybe we'll get to 200 after that. We'll see.
Well, maybe we should ask you to tell everybody what it does, because I just assume like people know what this is, but not everyone's following this as closely as we are. So you can talk about the new branding too, but like tell us about Rally Legal / now Spellbook, right? You rebranded?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we started as a company called Rally, with the mission to make legal transactions go faster. In our view, they were always 10x to 100x, slower and less efficient than they should be. So we started doing traditional automation, working with, still over 100 firms and lots of businesses as well, using document automation to, help with the drafting and review process. And that solution worked pretty well, and we still have a number of customers using that solution. It's called Rally, rallylegal.com, and you can see it there. But we would always get the feedback from our customers like, oh, this system is cool, like templates are cool, and template-based automation is cool, but it doesn't capture the nuance of like my bespoke work. As a lawyer, everything I write is hand-tuned, to my client situation. And I used to roll my eyes when I heard that. But then I realized, working with lawyers long enough, that, every deal is super unique. And actually that value lawyers bring to the table is important. When I'm an engineer, so when I use GitHub Copilot, I immediately saw how that can actually help you write pretty bespoke code as a programmer that fits your exact situation.
Right.
And I said, like, this is what lawyers are definitely looking for. This is what they want. Something that's going to help them as they do the kind of bespoke editing and reviewing work faster, but not kind of removing their control, not taking them out of the driver's seat. So we launched Spellbook and our LLM tool. And what Spellbook basically does, you can go to spellbook.legal and you can see a very old video. Actually, the video on our site is still the original version, and we've added like 30 features since. But we will help you, like, as you're writing a contract, we'll help you, draft new language. Well, if you load up any contract in Word, so we're in Word, which is where all lawyers work. we're on the side. So if you open up any contract, we're automatically analyzing that contract, figuring out, what's aggressive, what's unusual, what might you want to add to make the contract more robust. You can say who you're representing. So you can say, oh, I'm representing the customer, or I'm representing the vendor, or the investor, or whatever. And it will come up with all of these recommendations that the lawyer can do to make that contract better. And it's a really hard problem if you think of, I always like to go back to the problem, and a lot of folks who are, I think as consumers of legal services, we feel the problem in the price. We're like, what? Like, why is this so expensive? I just want a contract reviewed. Like, why is it costing me like $2,000 or whatever? But the reason is it's not because law firms are doing anything unethical. It's actually just really hard to review a contract. Imagine you have 100 pages, and it's your job, and your job is on the line if you get this wrong. You have to read 100 pages and make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to, screw over your client, basically. And if something turns out to be in there, your client's going to be really, really upset. And then there's professional liability issues there as well. So it's just it's a really hard problem. And so our customers find that this can help them speed up contract reviews by 2x to 4x. And that's a massive improvement for them and for their clients.
Yeah, I was going to say, Scott, because I noticed, having followed you guys for a few months, that with the upgrade to GPT-4 and with the obviously expansion of the types of law firms you're working with, obviously contracts are still at the center of it. But is this going to go into other areas of law? Do you see that being the next step, or do you see it being sort of limited within that realm of contracts only?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, we would like to become, the best AI co-pilot for all kinds of lawyers. But the reality is every practice area is very, very different. And we believe in kind of doing one thing really well at a time. And so we will, I think, be focused on contracts and commercial legal work for quite a while as we become the best tool for that. And then, as we saturate that, maybe we'll move on to the next practice area. We do have lots of lawyers coming from different practice areas. We do have, like personal injury lawyers trying us out, like estate planners or estate lawyers, lots of other practice areas as well. But we don't really focus on them yet. But we probably will eventually. But there's a lot to chew on. Yeah.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, Thomson Reuters is one of the participants in your current funding round. And if I remember, they own Westlaw. So Westlaw, an information service for lawyers. And I also saw that demonstrated, I think, at Microsoft Build this week, Westlaw integration into Microsoft Word. So first of all, did you know that was going to be announced this week? How does that impact the way you think about your business? You just said everybody's working in Word. And might we see Westlaw integrated into Spellbook in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, all great questions. So yeah, TR has Westlaw. They also have Practical Law, and Practical Law is a similar tool, more so for I would say business and commercial lawyers, whereas Westlaw is a little more case law oriented. So they have multiple products. I'll mention that. We had an inkling that announcement was coming, and TR is a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're the #1 legal resource in the world. So we will not be the only AI company to kind of work with them. We will, so really cool to see what they're doing with Copilot, Microsoft Copilot. I can't say much more right now officially about kind of what our plans are. All I can say is that, you can see from that announcement that the potential for combining AI with top tier kind of reliable databases and legal data sources is really powerful. And that's one of the reasons that, we're working with TR is because of that possibility. And I think every lawyer asks, why can I trust the text that comes out of this? It's from and it's where does it come from? Well, the internet, we trained on the internet, or we trained on all these public contracts. A lot of lawyers are not super comfortable with that answer. Obviously, tying into.
Let me ask you about that.
Go ahead.
First of all, have you noticed hallucinations, or have customers reported hallucinations to you? And by tying into some of these knowledge bases, is that going to be one of your strategies to reduce hallucinations?
Really good question. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said there's no hallucinations. There's no AI product out there on the market that I've ever seen that has zero so-called hallucinations. The way I would say we have a much higher accuracy rate for legal work than any other product out there, because we are tuned for legal and contracting work. So we have a tuned data set for that domain, which means our customers get better results than they likely would from Microsoft Copilot or another product, because we're able to narrowly tune on that domain. So definitely much less hallucination. The other thing we do to kind of counteract that is keeping the lawyer in the loop. So our whole mandate as a company is, we call it assistive AI, which we hope will become a new buzzword. What assistive AI is about keeping the user in the driver's seat and not like delegating all the tasks away to an agent that's just going to go do it all. What we do is we allow the lawyer to just do what they were already doing. They actually don't have to change anything. They don't have to go to a new chat window. They don't have to go to chat.openai.com. They just do what they're already doing, and we're like a wind at their back, or like an electric bicycle, like kind of helping push them along, give them suggestions as they work, similar to GitHub Copilot. And that technique of keeping the user in the driver's seat so that they can review the outputs and make sure they're right, I think really helps counteract any of those sorts of quality issues, because still that person has their hands on the wheel. It's like self-driving, as long as the person has their hands on the wheel, it's pretty safe. When the person is not near the wheel,
they have to review
a whole new level of risk. Yeah.
Just in terms of the UI, since we don't have a visual here for it right now, I have Microsoft Word open. How does Spellbook work on the side? Is it like a Grammarly type of approach, or do you have a separate side panel that's operating?
Yeah, so it's we have a side panel on the side. We can do some things like in the editor as well, and you can like right click and get some different Spellbook options. I wish I could show you now, but I just
no.
I have a new laptop, and I can't.
No problem.
I'm still setting up Word. We have a sidebar on the side with 3 panels. One panel is our spell and chat panel, which is a familiar kind of chat UI with what we call spells, which are highly tuned, really chains of prompts and LLM logic that is tuned for a really specific task, like what are the aggressive clauses, what are the conflicts within this contract, and things like that. Then we have our insights tab, which is going to automatically just give you a whole bunch of suggestions and recommendations. And then we have our drafting tab, which is meant you can type in like what you're trying to draft and insert into the contract, and it can help you do that. So 3 different panels kind of on the right that can do a whole bunch of different things.
That's great. Just a quick question too, because you're talking about all these customizations that you have. Are you using a lot of meta prompt in addition to the tuning?
Meta prompt in addition to the tuning.
Prompt enhancements that are basically running in the background, that they type in something, but they don't see that you're appending something to that prompt.
Oh yeah,
with the LLM. And I'm interested to know, like, particularly now that you're using GPT-4 with a larger context window, have you been using maybe meta prompting for your prompt engineering more than you were fine tuning before?
Really good question. So GPT-4, there's no fine-tuning version of that released yet. So we don't use GPT-4 for everything. We still use some of the, like GPT-3, you can still fine-tune. So we can use that for domain-specific, we would use that for really specific tasks, like, we want to find who all the parties are in this contract. That's something that fine-tuning is really good at. And it can be fast and cheap. GPT-4 is really good, and we use it in a whole bunch of things that we do in Spellbook. It requires, you actually can't fine tune it. So your only options are the meta prompting or chains of prompting, and combining other pieces of logic in. We don't have like the 32K context window, so a lot of the challenge in legal contracts is like, how do you process like 1,000-page document and not lose the context? So a lot of what we do is around like that, and stitching everything back together, like taking the contract apart and then stitching it all back together.
By the way, this is like such a great thing, because I'm going to ask you a question about that's not about Spellbook in just a second. But what I should tell people is, if you do want to see a demo that's like an older demo, on the VoiceBot YouTube channel. If you look back at some of the Synthedia conference events that we had, he actually walks down. And I know there's a lot of changes since then, but I think it's really good for people just to orient about what that is. And maybe we'll get something else, and we can put something in the show notes around linking to some of your more recent things. I think that's pretty amazing. So definitely everyone check out the YouTube channel there for that. But I wanted to ask you about something else. And
Sure.
Larger context windows.
Yeah.
Boy, Anthropic has a big context window. Are you going to, well, I should say, are you going to use those? And boy, did you feel a little anemic with your 11 million compared to this?
Yeah, good two questions. I guess the first one, as soon as we saw kind of Anthropic's 100K model out, we were immediately like, wow, this is going to be huge for legal applications. Absolutely huge. We were excited about 32K, but yeah, 100K is massive. So we are on Anthropic customers as well. We do use, like, their Claude instant model is also something we use. It's incredible. It's fast. It's faster than any of the OpenAI models, as far as I know. So we use that model for some things as well. But yeah, the larger context window is going to be absolutely massive. We're experimenting with it. It is different. So one thing you'll hear about people using their 100K model is it's not like a one-to-one. It's not like you're going to get the exact same results as you had in the shorter context window. It introduces kind of new complications and things like that. So it's different, and it's like every model you use has just like fuzzy differences to other models that you kind of have to get acquainted to. But yeah, we're really excited about it, and I foresee us using it a lot.
Got it. So you're not using Anthropic today yet, are you?
We do, yeah. We do use Anthropic, and in some of what we do, yes. So because we have very specialized chains that we use for different tasks. So one of the benefits of our product over something like ChatGPT is we create the perfectly tuned chains of different models to accomplish different legal tasks, and that could be very different depending on what you're trying to do. And so yeah, some of our spells will use that model. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so would it be that for the different spells, some of the spells are pulling from GPT-4 and some are pulling from Claude, and it just depends on what they're asking?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, we have a list of preset spells, like find aggressive terms, find missing clauses, find the points to negotiate. So those sorts of things. Yeah. So depending on those kind of preset tasks, we have kind of preset chains.
You have a multi-model approach right now.
Oh yeah, big time.
And you're using basically prompt chaining as your orchestration.
Yes, yeah, all sorts of chaining and other logic.
Do you have have you built a separate orchestration feature inside, or are you just using prompt chaining right now?
Yeah, so we kind of we were very early, so we kind of our engineering team built its own homegrown kind of prompt chaining tool set. We have started to use LangChain more though, which has definitely matured a lot since we originally tried it. So we're using it more. Yeah.
I was gonna say, because I remember early on, you were one of the big draws you said was having something that could easily summarize a contract for lay people if a lawyer was trying to explain something to a non-lawyer. And I assume that at the time, I'm sure that was all GPT-3, but now does that depend on what the kind of contract it is, if it's going to be a Claude summarization or a OpenAI summarization?
It would depend on the length. So yeah, like if it's an 8-page contract, we can very easily just throw that into GPT-4 and it'll do a pretty good job. But if it's a 1,000-page contract and now you have to cut it into many pieces and run it, through a model a whole bunch of times, or use a model with a larger context window, then we would take a different approach.
Got it.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so let me ask you a different question because I know we just have you for a couple more minutes here.
Yep.
But we did have a lot of news from Microsoft this week. I don't know if you paid much attention to the Build conference and some of their announcements. Obviously, OpenAI, one of your key partners, was very active there. What did you think? What stood out to you?
Yeah, so I mean, our head has been very down. Just kind of, again, trying to keep up with our own demand, scale our own product and team, and closing out the fundraise and the press release and all that stuff. So I'm not as tapped into it as maybe I would normally be, as we've been really busy. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think I have any intelligent, like smart takes
No
that you
problem.
probably you haven't heard already.
Yeah. Well,
But
if you have any impressions, that's cool. But I'm actually in particular interested. Are you using Azure OpenAI services? Or are you still direct to OpenAI, or are you considering a switch? I mean, how are you thinking about that?
yeah, good question. So we do go direct right now. Been considering Azure for a while. There are definitely some benefits in going that route. So we've played with the Azure version of some of the OpenAI stuff already. So yeah, we're definitely considering it. And like some of the previously, the Azure services had a lot of really good kind of privacy features, and they still do. But OpenAI's kind of privacy features have improved direct as well. So, for instance, I think a couple months ago they announced that no, by default, like no one using the OpenAI API is going to have their data used for AI training.
Right.
And that was a big deal. We actually had an agreement with them before that, to not have any of our data used for training, because our lawyer customers just wouldn't be okay with that. But now OpenAI has that by default. So that's good for them. Yeah.
It's what's your relationship like with OpenAI? They seem you're very busy, but they seem also very busy. Are you able to like have regular interactions with them or get good response time when you need it?
Yeah, good question. They're extremely busy, and we are one vendor of many using their services. Yeah, we do have we are able to be in touch with them. We are able to get responses from them pretty quickly. Yeah, but they definitely have a lot going on. Yeah, and I'm definitely not like getting lunch with Sam Altman or anything like that. Yeah.
Oh, there's someone in the audience here who just was with Sam Altman this week. So
okay, cool.
A picture. Well, like, I was trying to figure out, was that a deep fake that he was with Sam Altman or not? Hey, Scott, this has been amazing. Congratulations once again. How can people who are watching right now find out more about what you're doing, see some demos, sign up for your ridiculously long wait list?
It's shortening, so don't let that discourage any viewers too much. Spellbook.legal is the best place to go. We're about to put up a new video. We've just been so busy that we've added so much to our product, and we haven't changed much on the site. But yeah, spellbook.legal, you can check out our older videos there. You can sign up for the waitlist. We are now with this fundraise, we're growing the team super quickly. So I think we will start to clear that backlog very, very quickly. And you can even email us with a note in our contact form. Just say you saw us on the show, and we'll try to bump you to the front of the waitlist.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. If you read Synthedia or you watch the Generative AI News Rundown every week, here are the many benefits you get. Hey, Scott, that's been amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, guys. We appreciate it.
All right. Excellent. Well, that was fun, Eric.
Yes.
It's great when we can have a live guest like that, particularly when it's breaking news. That just came out. And look, Mark Barris, he liked it too to have Scott here. So, we'll try to integrate that more. We like to have guests in as well on top of this. So let's see here. I do want to just bring this back up. Now, we do have a longer piece on YouTube right now where we were able to, Eric and I broke down, really the 5, or it's turned out to be 6, but we called it the 5 top reasons, or the 5 top announcements. But I wanted to back up a little bit, so people should go check that out. But I want to run through a few of these items too, because not everybody will have seen them. So there are a couple high level items. So Bing search and ChatGPT, that's coming, not there yet. It's going to hit the desktop first, probably for ChatGPT 4 or ChatGPT Plus subscribers. You have to select them. Like right now, you select the browsing model, which is not that great from my experience. I assume this will be much better. I do like that idea that you can actually just stay in context if you're a big ChatGPT user. Plugins. One of the most interesting thing about plugins is that Azure is now going to make this available when you're building your own Copilot, you're building your own ChatGPT type of solution. That's going to be something that they'll have. If there's a plugin that's available on ChatGPT, it'll also be available for Bing. Like Bing's going to start rolling out Copilots. Plus, if you're building your own on OpenAI services, and they've got the Windows Copilot coming out. So Clippy actually just got an upgrade. It's going to work throughout the platform. And actually, I do want to talk about this other thing. So this idea of GitHub Copilot chat, GitHub Copilot, we'll talk about that maybe when we talk about some of the generators. But this last thing that I thought was really important was build your own ChatGPT like copilots with Azure AI Studio. So those are some of the key things. There's like the data fabric, also important. The new Copilot architecture, also very important. But Eric, I just wanted you to weigh in on some of these topics that you think are most important, particularly the one around the enterprise side.
Yeah, I think that's where Microsoft does a lot of exciting announcements around the consumer area, but I think that the enterprise is where a lot of the energy and a lot of the resources are going for good reason. And the idea of every company being able to have their own ChatGPT specific to their needs, so that every employee can have a generative AI chatbot that understands everything about the company they work at, is obviously a big draw, and especially for some of the really big companies that have a lot of complex policies and lengthy pamphlets for every single aspect of working there. And I think that it similarly by making Azure part of it, it encourages companies to use Azure not only internally but with all of their products that face customers as well. And of course, as we discussed the other day, the more Microsoft can do to make it easy and useful to stay within their product library, the more they're going to want to do that. So I think that this all comes back to keeping companies and the people who work at those companies within Azure, within Microsoft as much as possible, and the plugins and building your own chatbot are all the tools they need to encourage that.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing that I didn't mention was that adopting the plugin architecture has been very important for Microsoft. So there's a number of Microsoft services. We call them cognitive services, whether it's search or translation. There's a few others. Those are now plugins. And so if you're building on OpenAI in Azure, so Azure OpenAI services, you'll be able to actually just seamlessly integrate some of these Microsoft services. And I think this is could be tremendously beneficial to Microsoft, because there's a lot of people out there who we know who are, if they're doing speech recognition or they're doing translation, let's say they're just doing a test or they're doing sort of a pre-production proof of concept, they're just going to hook up to Google because they're used to using those services. But if they want to go with OpenAI because, hey, that's the standard right now that everybody's using, and they want to make sure that they're benchmarking against that first, if they want these other services, why go all the way out to Google to get those? I mean, you can do it. It's not that hard. But why just not click a button and all of a sudden you're using the Azure version?
It's not even that. It could be as you're doing everything else, you might be like, oh, wait, I wanted to include other languages. And you just literally type in natural language, hey, be sure to translate this into these languages also. Boom, it uses the plugin, done. Like, you don't even have to go as far as clicking through a menu.
Yeah. The other thing too that I think is overlooked, but might turn out to be a really big deal, is this Microsoft Fabric. It's for data. And it seems really low level. Essentially, what they're doing is they're allowing you to basically normalize your data across your AI models and your other services and use them in concert. So that everything that they talked about was Copilot, and Copilot this, Copilot that. And one of the things you might need a Copilot for is your data. And you can only do that if you have some consistent way to index it, some consistent way to view it. This is a longstanding problem. Microsoft Data's Fabric will not solve this problem. But for part of your solution, particularly for your AI solutions, if you're running them through Azure, you're going to get this as a byproduct of it. And you're going to be able to do your normal things that you would do with data analysis, but you're also going to be able to put a Copilot up there and just ask questions about the data, not just in one model or one application, but across models and applications. Yeah,
I think the analytics side is one of those elements of AI and of data stuff in general that is sometimes seems a little obtuse or deliberately not it certainly doesn't seem immediately as interesting. But as you say, with having this all accessible within one space, even partially accessible within one space, means that you're skipping a lot of extra steps and saving a lot of time and resources that you might otherwise have to use just to even if you're just trying to make sure you're not repeating something that's already been done.
So bundling and synergy is one of the ways that you can see that Microsoft's been working on this for years. They didn't just like 6 months ago call Code Red and say, let's do this. And you're talking to Alan Furstenberg. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago. He's a Google development expert. He sort of agrees with the assessment. Like Google's got a lot of the components, but it's always about this feature or that component. And they talk about them in like upgrading things that you have, or here's a new thing for point solution. Whereas every time we look at Microsoft, even if people are mostly using them as point solutions, it's about this integrated whole. So that's like one of the key things. And they have this partnership with OpenAI. They've got 100 million people using ChatGPT. Now those people are going to be using Bing search. Maybe that's the way that this goes to the masses, more so than using the Edge browser and do Bing chat.
Yeah. And it's also something that builds in terms of business services, it builds on itself, because all you need is one high up executive to say, "Oh, how can we make ChatGPT part of our business services?" It gets used. They tell others about it who have heard about ChatGPT, and suddenly it becomes a trend amongst the C-suite across all kinds of businesses.
Yeah. So like just a couple of things I'll keep people with. So when you look at the way Microsoft is approaching this, they're approaching it as a system of products and not products, right? That's very different than what other people are doing. The other thing that's going on right here is they have access to the full stack. They have the most popular large language model today. And they have a very capable, but not the most popular text image generator and other solutions like in their back pocket, because they own what we believe is 49%. They're a plurality owner. There were some other things that were said during build that made me believe that actually OpenAI has been reporting to them for some time, but there's a whole nother conversation there. But this is like very significant for Microsoft. And then the one other thing I'll say is when you look at enterprise buyers, they all know they need to do something, but they're uncertain about how to proceed because this market is, we'll call it immature. It's new. And there's a high sense of perceived risk. And frankly, most people trust Microsoft, right? It's particularly in the enterprise space, they feel like they've been treated well over the years, that they have their interests in mind. And this idea of them having a leading solution plus this system-based approach plus trust just seems like a winning combination to me.
Yeah, I mean, that is largely how Microsoft became the giant that then faced government issues about monopolies, is because it wasn't necessarily that they were faster or better than some of their rivals, but they could point to an integrated system that was reliable and that had whatever issues it had were addressed and resolved relatively quickly compared to some of the other tech companies at the time. And yeah, I mean, Google became a big deal because they were able to mimic some of what Microsoft did, but better, faster, easier. Yes. And that's in this case, Microsoft again sort of setting the groundwork for it. May be done better by Google in the future, but right now Microsoft really is way ahead in that space.
Okay, so we go into much more detail on this in a YouTube video that just posted a couple of days ago. So if you just go to our VoiceBot YouTube channel, that's VoiceBot and Synthedia, all the stuff are going to show up there. You'll be able to see the full breakdown. But I like what we were able to talk about today because we didn't really focus on that. We covered a few of the main points, but then we talked about some items we didn't get to the other day. Now, everybody, this is Gain. It's the Generative AI News Rundown. We do this every week at 12 noon Eastern time, and it broadcasts live on YouTube and on LinkedIn. If you're here, you probably know that. If you're watching afterwards, you may not know that. You should join us at some point. You can see that people have been asking questions or making comments. We try to integrate that into the discussion. Eric and I break down the news every week. Sometimes we have guests. Today we had some breaking news with Rally Legal, now Spellbook Legal, bringing down a big fundraising round. So join us. We'd really like to do that. And if you want to read these things, basically the articles behind this, we'll put them in the show notes, but you can sign up at any time for Synthedia, which is the daily newsletter on generative AI, or you can go to voicebot.ai, where Eric and I both write on a daily basis. Eric writes more than I do. So he's the resident expert. Okay. So let's keep moving here. We've got a lot to do, and we've gotten through just a small part of it. But you wrote a story, I think it was just yesterday, about Opera. Opera is really interesting. The browser wars are back.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. It's not something I thought would be coming back as a competitive debate over which browser you use, instead of it being just about, do you use Chrome because you like Google, or Edge because they're on a Microsoft thing. It's now about how do you how does your browser employ generative AI? And Opera's been really aggressive in pushing integration of generative AI chatbots, and now has created an actual native service called Aria, appropriate for Opera. But it's at the moment using ChatGPT, but with an eye for multiple models in the future. But it's just, instead of having to go to a specific website or open a specific extension, it's just, if you have this browser, you can access this generative AI chatbot, and it's as basic to its function as any search engine would be, and really suggests that Opera thinks this is how people are going to interact with the web in the future, and very near future. And they may be right, since they're not alone in wanting to bring generative AI to web browsing. They're just very much ahead of some of their rivals, their bigger rivals.
Well, I think Opera is really an interesting approach here. So we have the Edge browser from Microsoft, which integrated Bing Chat initially. Bing Chat, that's the only place you can get it right now, is through the Edge browser or the mobile app. Actually, people should try that out. It's actually not bad. But Opera has this sort of different approach. They're also using, I think it's GPT 3.5 predominantly. And there's a lot of, or maybe it's Chat Turbo.
They call it Chat GPT, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's probably Turbo, because that's the cheapest,
right,
and it's the best on the cost and budget side. Yep. But they've said from the start that they're going to have multiple tools. That then, if you go back to the Edge browser, and by the way, I never would have tried the Edge browser if I didn't have to do Bing Chat there. I wanted Bing Chat. They have all these tools that are integrated into it. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so Opera's mimicking that, and they're being technology independent. So they're going to put different types of tools, won't always be OpenAI technology behind it. They've got some other partnerships, but it's this idea of the browser is your productivity center.
Yeah, and going back to what we were saying about the ChatGPT mobile app, it's not just the desktop or laptop web browser. It's still in beta at the moment, but it's actually part of their Android app. So if you have the Opera mobile app for browsing the web on an Android device, you will also be able to access Aria. So it really is addressing how people use the web and how people might want to use generative AI at the same time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, and the funny thing too is, if we think about Chrome, so Google, one of the leaders in the space, particularly the leader in market share, both for search and for web browser use, it doesn't have these features. I mean, they've got this very extensive extensions called plugins methodology, which is great, and you can use that. And what I find that I'm doing now on Chrome, because they don't have these other productivity solutions, is I'm using Perplexity, which also has an extension, but also you can just go to the Perplexity page. Perplexity, if you guys don't know, it's basically ChatGPT with internet, so it's like Bing Chat, Chrome. It's like very obvious that it's falling behind right now. It takes a long time for consumers to shift, right, to create other habits. But if you look at someone like Opera, which is sort of it's ahead of Edge, Microsoft Edge, I think, in terms of adoption, but in terms of regular use as opposed to just like distribution, this is an opportunity, a rare opportunity for them to potentially get consumers at a time when they're willing to consider alternatives.
Yeah, and Opera has always been a sort of indie alternative. It's, if you didn't want to use Mozilla, or you didn't want to use Google or Microsoft, you would turn to Opera as an example of a relatively independent company, but using pretty powerful web browsing technology. But now if they're trying to push ahead and be the home for the power users, which presumably they hope will trickle down to the more mainstream casual users of web browsers. And I think, and also if they can set a standard that others imitate, then that will help them really not only grab more users, but really keep them there, even if Google and Microsoft and so on catch up in terms of features.
Well, and some of this is about retention. So if Chrome was the first with these new features out, it would have sucked more people away from Edge and Opera. So one of the first things they're doing is defending their turf. Their loyal users are going to have these benefits sooner, and they're going to get some incremental gain. Will it be significant? I don't know. But I will say, let's face it, as soon as Chrome comes out with these features, as soon as Bard goes, more widely available, people start using it, and like it's integrated into actual Google search, that will immediately be the most used conversational search assistant out there. It's just because of the convenience and because of existing habits. It doesn't mean it's going to be better, but they will have leading market share. And this is the whole thing where Google's delay in getting into market is a very significant opportunity for these other players. They have this moment, but they have to seize the window of opportunity right now. And I think most of the other browser companies are not.
Yeah, I've always, for so many years now, I can't even remember how long I've used Mozilla and Firefox just because it's what I started using and then kept with it. But this is the kind of moment that would make me and others like me shift which browser I use as my default, just because I want to be able to get to a generative AI chatbot without having to navigate to a specific website or make extra steps. If it's just there integrated into the browser itself, then I'm probably going to pick that one.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, and I'll just tell people, we've been talking about some of these things, whether it's the ChatGPT mobile app or the Perplexity, if you haven't used that. I've done a couple of videos recently. People were asking a lot of questions, and I thought it would just be easier to create a video to answer their questions about how these things work and how we think about the different feature sets, how they compare. So if you just go to our YouTube channel, you can check those out. Those have been pretty popular so far. Okay, so there's another big news item this week. Adobe, so that's obviously a big name in the space. Firefly is their new generative AI solution, but Photoshop is a giant in this space, and they have some generative AI solutions, which I just had up in Creative Suite yesterday.
Yeah, it's one again, speaking toward what people already use and where they're going to find these new features. Adobe talked about Firefly several weeks ago now, and about employing generative AI tools for creating and editing images and videos, and a lot of really, at least in the demonstrations, very impressive tools for really impressive ways of creating and editing images. But now it's not only available to the super high level Adobe users, but it's in Photoshop, which is a far more widely used and accessible tool. So now, again, it's this trickling down of instead of having to pay tons and tons of money for an entire Adobe suite, if you pay for Photoshop because you like playing with images and so on, now you can get access to these tools and really become comfortable with using this kind of technology on your visual, your images, and eventually, of course, with videos as well.
Yeah, and we have this note from LinkedIn user. It's been anonymized. This might be Amy Stapleton. Sometimes it is. I don't know why. Sometimes the people don't show up. But to use the generative AI feature, you do need to download the new beta. It's available this week in Photoshop. It's not the newest version. I had this issue. I had this exact same issue actually coming back, and so. The other thing I'll just comment on this is say, if I think of most of Creative Suite, it's largely a business user context. Photoshop is definitely both business and consumer. And this is, I think, significant for Adobe and significant for generative AI to reach more and more consumers in their tasks, sometimes hobby, sometimes business.
And more than that also is that when I think Photoshop, I think students, I think younger people, I think of every college student working on a presentation, and every intern at a advertising firm or marketing firm who will definitely have Photoshop and will definitely start playing with these. And then again, it becomes a default, the way that Photoshop itself became a default tool.
Yeah, fair enough. And so a lot of these articles that we're bringing up, Eric wrote them. So if you see VoiceBot, just go to voicebot.ai if you're not familiar with it. I think most of the people who are watching today are probably familiar with that. But if you want to get a little bit more detail, and also one of the great things about Eric's stories is he links in his stories, he links back to previous articles that are related. So you can go very easily to things about Firefly and things about competing products that are in this space. All right. So next thing we had on the list was, hey, code generators. And okay, so we'll talk about Codey in a minute as well, but we have Code Whisperer from Amazon. We have GitHub Copilot, which is the first and sort of the best known. There's a couple other independents, but now we have an open source version.
Yeah, this is sort of an ongoing theme. Is every time there's an announcement from OpenAI or Google or whoever, almost immediately, or even before sometimes, Hugging Face is out there with an open source alternative, and that's true with code generation as much as anything else. In this case, it's a product called Starcoder that they built with a company called ServiceNow. And the idea is that, like the codex that is the basis of GitHub Copilot, and as you said with the Amazon Code Whisperer, it's a tool for writing and editing computer code, programming code, with the idea being that it can fill in all the gaps. It can check, it can act as a pair programmer. It can check where you may have made mistakes or help you figure out how to accomplish a specific programming task. But again, instead of having to either pay for a license or rely on a limited free version, you just have in this case, it is still a license, but it's more of making sure that you're not using it to create malicious viruses. But the point being that Hugging Face and its partners in what they call the Big Code Project is they want to make all of these generative AI features as accessible as possible without having to necessarily pay a lot of money for proprietary data and proprietary programming.
Well, yeah. And I think the other thing that people are thinking about is, yes, we talked about trust with Microsoft, and maybe there's some trust, particularly on the business side with Google as well, and trust with Amazon. But again, if they're observing what you're doing at any given time, that's going to start making people concerned. We saw this in the voice assistant space in particular. A lot of people who compete against Amazon, like retailers, for example, or consumer products companies that want to sell direct, they were really nervous about Amazon seeing what was going on. People have seen this in the Facebook world, where Facebook will sort of observe what the partners are doing, and then they might replicate that feature or something like that. And sorry about that. I'm having a little lag today, but hopefully it's okay with everyone. So having the ability to just control this yourself, to have it externally and not be part of one of the big tech ecosystems all the time for what is probably a proprietary part of your business, I think it's going to be appealing to some people. The downside of this is it's hard for me to believe that this is going to be as well supported because it's so strategic to like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. But the fact that ServiceNow was part of it, I mean, ServiceNow is a huge company. If they have decided that they're going to support it, maybe that's a way that we can ensure that it will be really good and maintained over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the always the trade-off is, you might have a more powerful tool or a better supported tool, but the trade-off is that you have to share your own data or give up some privacy in that way. And, it's depending on what you need to use it for, and obviously depending on what you want to pay, just purely in terms of the monetary cost, you might be just comfortable with the open source version, especially if you are yourself a developer, a programmer who's involved in the open source world, who spends a lot of time on GitHub or on these other forums where you discuss these things, because customization is really appealing to those who understand how to really dive into these source code elements. But for the average consumer, of course, that's less of a draw. But I think there's definitely going to be a market for any sort of open source generative AI tool.
Absolutely. And here's Google also announced Codey is available, or it's rolling out in the US. And for Synthetia, user or Synthetia readers, I apologize. When I sent this out, it didn't actually save one of my versions. And so the email that went out was an incomplete story. It was actually mostly good. You probably wouldn't have only noticed it, but there's actually more stuff in here that we put in the version, which I've updated. So if you guys go to the Synthetia site, you'll see this article. But the only point I'll bring here is a couple things. If Microsoft is created something in this space, Google's going to try to match it as quickly as possible. Not that Google wasn't already working on this, because they absolutely were. The system didn't just come up over the last couple of months. Codey right now is available in the US. It's rolling out first to subscribers. This is for the Colabs users. It's focused on Python initially, so it's a narrower solution. It's really targeting Android developers, which is fine. This is the idea of like secure your base first, make sure that they have the tools that they want, and then sort of expand. But the point that I wanted to bring up was they roll this thing out, which is great. It's not exactly an apples to apples comparison to what you're going to get with GitHub Copilot yet. And so this is just sort of another indication that Google is making progress, but they still have a lot of work to do. Even though they make an announcement, it feels like they filled a hole. They've only partially filled that hole.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like Google's racing to catch up as much as possible, and which is slightly strange because they have such a powerful collection of models behind them. I mean, Codey uses Palm 2, right, which is itself an incredibly powerful LLM. I mean, it's just a matter of speed and focus, that where Google wants to focus and how much energy they want to put into getting what features out quickly. And they pushed out they announced a ton of things at I/O last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess now. And I think that there's going to be a slower rollout from those announcements, but I think that within a few months, there'll be a lot more parity in what Google has versus what Microsoft has.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of things, they do have some time to catch up. I mean, I think that the space is moving very fast, but in some ways, the supply side is moving faster. Like the features are coming faster than adoption. And it's not that that people aren't adopting it. They are, but they're not adopting all the features instantly. And each feature doesn't necessarily get you 10 new, or 10% increase in users. It's more that the existing users are adopting the new features, and that's helping new users discover. But that's okay. So we're coming to the end. I did want to hit on Tesla because we have 2 Tesla stories this week. The first is an article you wrote, Eric, about Tesla robots.
Yeah, this is funny. It was one of those things from a few years ago that feels even longer now, where Elon Musk announced that Tesla would be developing humanoid robots. And to kick that off, he brought a human dressed like a robot on stage, which admittedly made a lot of people think it was an unserious announcement. But here we are, and there are these actual early stage still, but humanoid robots capable of moving around, walking around, and picking things up. And eventually, of course, the idea being that they'll work in factories or be able to accomplish tasks that are really repetitive or too difficult for humans. And it's not quite they don't quite have the terrifying nature of the Boston Dynamics robot dogs, but they do represent a big leap forward. And considering how we also know that Musk is working on generative AI projects over at Twitter, there feels like a lot of potential crossover here.
Yeah, and X.AI. Maybe the robots will wind up in there at some point. It's really interesting, though, that what is Tesla? Is it an electric car company? Is it a battery company? Is it a robot company? I mean so it's like they're changing the very nature of that business.
Yeah, and a robot company is exactly what Musk and some of the others at Tesla have suggested it will be, because they're saying that these robots will cost as little as $20K or even less, which is really not much at all for the kind of flexibility and function that they're suggesting we'll have, especially if it runs on Tesla batteries that are supposed to be very long lasting anyway. I mean, again, it's still several steps away from seeing them in a showroom or something, but it does mean that it's not just an announcement that fades away. It's going to be something that other companies will have to consider in their own plans for future factories.
Yeah, Janice Mandel just said it's a passion project. And I think she's right. The interesting thing, though, is it's a passion project with option value, right? So if Tesla is, just creates these robots and they're kind of fun and they help improve the brand and they're $20,000 and they don't like, maybe they sell 100 of them or 1,000, whatever. It's not like, but if they become super popular at some point, if there's like a use case everyone clamors to, all of a sudden you have a car company that has this whole other huge market that it can address. And like everybody understands like the size of the auto market and the entrenched competitors and all those things. Robot market's far more dynamic and could be basically what we would call blue ocean strategy for Tesla. So I think there's this underlying competitive dynamic. You start with a passion project, like Janice said, but it also has this other angle that might be really important. Now, Tesla showed up in another story this week. There was a YouTuber he's a real estate agent. He does a lot of like wealth coaching type of things. He did and I would show you the video, but he removed it. It stayed up for a few days, but it's like gone now maybe for obvious reasons. But in any event, Ryan Reynolds was in it. And so he basically did a deep fake of Ryan Reynolds. It was, I think, purposely not a great deep fake, right? But you could see him moving and things like that. And basically he talked about Tesla and it was a very funny script, a little crude, but very funny.
With a synthetic voice to help sell it.
And yeah, in a synthetic voice. And like, it basically was pitching Tesla saying, I'm Ryan Reynolds. I think this is amazing. And he said all these like funny things about it. And then Elon Musk, he responded, see the video's removed. He responded, nice, right? Okay. So what just happened? So this independent guy got Elon Musk notice what he did. It's like the type of trolling or interesting, fun thing that we've seen Musk like in the past. And so he responded, and that got it more exposure, but he pulled it down. So we'll come back to that in just a second. Almost immediately, Maximum Effort, which a lot of people don't know, is a ad agency or sort of film studio, sort of advertising type of thing.
Creative agency, yeah.
Yeah, that Ryan Reynolds is either a part owner or full owner.
He's a co-founder of, yeah.
Okay, he's a co-founder. Yeah, so they, I think within the same day or maybe the next day, turned around a story about Aviation Gin, which is also partly owned by Ryan Reynolds.
Mostly owned,
and it used a deep fake in the sort of the same quality level of Elon Musk, using almost word for word the same script with all the crude and humorous elements for the Tesla, but they just inserted things. Like there was one thing like, all for the cost of a Corolla was for the Toyota Corolla. That makes sense for Tesla. And here he said like, and you can have 35,000 bottles of this all for the cost of a Toyota Corolla. And I just wanted, and then Ryan Reynolds came back and he played the Elon Musk role and did nice, which I thought was interesting. But both of these videos, they got a lot of views. It was funny. It was like sort of a weekend story. They've both been taken down. And I think it's really fascinating that even though that they use these deepfakes, they got the benefit. They don't need to persist. And so this is one of the things we might start seeing with deepfakes. It's not these things that like stick around for a long time. It might be these like quick hits, almost like, Snapchats that like, oh, you better see it now or it's going to be gone. And in the meantime, the brands get the benefit of the exposure.
Yeah. And also, I mean, well, yes, the official ones have been taken down. One of my favorite sayings is you can't delete the internet. If you really want to find them, it's not like they're really gone forever and never to be seen again. It's they may get harder to find or it may take a little more effort to find, but you can see them if you want to, as you can with most things that are theoretically taken down from the internet. But what it points to is that deepfake technology is at a level where relatively good deepfakes can be made and to perform within a few hours. And obviously, the original creator had spent some time on it, and of course, a creative agency has a lot of resources behind it to make it happen that much more quickly. But the point being that brands and eventually individuals won't have the luxury of spending a long time creating and editing a video. If they want to go for a deepfake style, they'll put it out very quickly and have it be good enough. And that's all that really matters. And I think we're already starting to see it with political things as well. And I think there's I think it's just going to become part of the vocabulary of marketing, of advertising, and of every other sort of salesmanship. But whether or not that's good is debatable. But it's definitely a thing that just is part of the landscape now.
Absolutely. Okay, so folks, if you joined late, you can see this. The replay will be up on YouTube in just a couple of minutes. You can see the YouTube channel right there if you're on LinkedIn or somewhere else. You're probably watching this on YouTube afterwards, so that would be fine. I really appreciate it. We had a special guest today from Spellbook Legal. Talked about his $10 million fundraising round, plus also talked about how a lot of these tools work. So I hope you guys appreciated the insight there. He said, if you're a law firm and you want to jump the queue, they've got 8,000 people on the wait list. If you want to jump the queue because you listened here, if you just say you listened here, you'll get to jump the queue. So we're going to do more things like that. Definitely sign up for Synthedia. Sign up for or check out voicebot.ai. The Synthedia newsletter, trying to sign up for that. But also join us next week live. We'd love to have you. Make some comments. Let us know you're here. I appreciate everybody coming. Eric Schwartz, thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you.
All right, folks. Bye-bye.